Tonight?
I'm rooting for everybody black. I am betting on black tonight.
Lovely. You look great.
Welcome to Code Black Facts, where we talk about all things black to include news and viral videos, mental health, self-love, self-care, self-development, black women issues, crime stories, and black history. If you are interested in any of these topics, please subscribe to my channel, like, share, and don't forget to comment below. Thank you.
Say it's a black thing, run deep in the roots. Blacker the berry, baby, the sweeter the juice.
The students were taking a break in the classroom when Mr. Payton entered the room and began rifling through a bag which contained a handgun that belonged to one of the students. The owner of the bag was able to prevent the gun from being stolen, and Mr. Payton was escorted out of the classroom at that time. An employee spoke to Mr. Payton for several minutes trying to figure out what he was doing in the gun range. A short time later, another employee called police to report the attempted grand larceny. 3 employees escorted Mr. Payton outside of the business and waited for officers to arrive. Officer Wynn and his partner instructed Mr. Payton to stand in front of their patrol vehicle. Mr. Payton ignored those instructions and started to walk away while hiding his right hand in his jacket pocket.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Code Black Facts. Thank you guys for tuning in. So I wanted to come to you guys with this particular viral video. This did happen back in 2021. It was on February the 3rd of 2021 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Police were called and responded to a concealed handgun license class for a man who they alleged attempted to steal one of the students' guns from his bag. When police arrived, they approached the suspect, who was later identified as Marvin Payton Jr. As you can see from the video, Marvin was standing outside the building to talking to some of the guys who were attending class. In the video, you also see Marvin attempt to run away from officers as soon as they pulled up, causing the officers to grab for Marvin is his name, excuse me, Marvin. During the tussle, Marvin begins pushing and striking at the officers. According to police officers, the female officer was stabbed with a screwdriver during the incident. After the tussle, Marvin continued to attempt to run and was ultimately shot and is no longer with us anymore. You also see other gun carriers pull out their weapon and aim them at Marvin as well. So in this particular video, you guys, I want to talk about the state of Black people committing crimes. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about mental illness among Black Americans, okay? And I also want to talk about Black women arguing with men. I'm going to continue to play the rest of the video, and then I'll come back with my sentiments.
Officers attempted to grab Mr. Payton, but he pulled away and still refused to listen to the officers. Officers attempted to grab Mr. Payton by his arms once again to gain control of him. This time, Mr. Payton pulled away and produced a screwdriver from his pocket and violently attacked the officers. Mr. Payton made several overhand strikes with the screwdriver towards one of the officers' head and neck area.
Okay, so I just want to interject. The officer who was actually stabbed was a female officer. I do point that out because, you know, again, we're talking about police responding. There's a Black man involved, and then there is other people with guns, and then there's a female involved. So I just, because all of that, you know, it all adds to the pot of how this tragically went wrong. And I do want to point out that even though this happened in 2021, February of 2021, this video has recently went viral again on Twitter because you have a bunch of people bringing up, you know, training as it relates to law enforcement, bringing up whether or not it was lawful for them to shoot at a man with his back turned and who was running away. Again, we all know as it relates to Black people, that's a very common story that we hear. Black men, Black people getting shot in the back as they try to run away. You also have people talking about whether or not it was lawful, talking about, oh, well, after he presented, because he was no longer a threat, um, officers should, you know, not shoot, even though he was no longer a threat. You have people who argue the opposite of that and saying, okay, well, technically he's a threat because he did stab one of the officers, and you can't just stab an officer and think that you're going to run away. But again, this video is not to argue about whether or not it was lawful. This video is not meant to argue about whether or not officers have enough training. This video is not about any of that. I think that that is a mute argument in today's time. I think that it's an argument that wastes time, particularly when we are on social media and you have people arguing these points. It's a time waster because the laws are the laws. And, again, either the law, and again, I haven't researched this, so I don't know, I'm just going off of what the conversation is on Twitter. Okay. This video is not to argue the law. I think that, that is something that is needed. We do need people fighting on behalf of Black people as it relates to our rights, as it relates to equality, and as it relates to our constitutional rights and laws. We absolutely need that to happen. But again, when you're on social media, 99.99% of us are not, we're not in a place where we can make changes. We're just not. So to argue with someone, to me, is just a time waster. People do that to waste your time. Don't argue. And that's something that I want to talk about Black women doing when it comes to arguing with men. I'm going to continue with the video.
Mr. Payton was able to stab one officer during his violent attack. As the injured officer fell to the ground, Officer Wynn and 3 employees of the business discharged their firearms, striking Mr. Payton. Officers immediately summoned medical personnel, but Mr. Payton succumbed to his injuries at the scene.
Okay. So, again, one of the first things that I want to talk about is the state of Black people committing crimes. Okay. We are in 2022. And 99.99% of us know, even most teenagers and children know that, as Black people, we're not white people. Like we don't live the same lives or have the same, opportunities or is given the same benefit of the doubt. Okay. We're talking about a man who went into a place full of guns with, let me rephrase that. A man who went into a place full of white men with guns. What do you think the outcome is going to be? So for me to see people, particularly Black people online, arguing with other people about whether or not police was in the right or wrong, like it's a time waster, right? And the reason it's a time waster is because they know the law. They know, but because it's a Black person, you have people who will argue with you that, oh, well, even though that it's a law to not do it that way or to do it this way or whatever have you, that goes out the window. Like we know this. It's like it's really it's cringing. It's cringing, and especially when I see women doing this. It's so cringy to me. It's so cringy. But the state of Black people, like no Black person in their right mind could possibly think they could go into a place full of white men with guns and live to tell the story. Like nobody thinks that. And the danger in, some of the people online, particularly Black people, trying to justify this, the danger in that is that what will happen is that you get those people, and we've seen these people before. Let's not act like we have not, who they get pulled over by police and they're talking about they're a sovereign citizen and they know their rights and da 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 and da da da. It's like, dude, they don't care. Did we not see what happened to Khalil Castile? Did we not see what happened to the many other people? I mean, we're living in a day after your Tamir Rice, after Trayvon Martin, after Breonna Taylor, after the list goes on and on and on. We are living in the aftermath of that. And if you are Black and think that you can walk, first of all, if you Black and think that you walk the same, your walk through life is the same as a white man or a white woman or even a white child, you are insane. And this goes back to, how teaching Black children, teenagers, this is not saying, and again, this is not to say that you scare them with any of this. No, but you have to talk to them about the differences and the state that Black people are in right now in these times. And I don't know if this young man, because he was 27, so I don't know if if he was aware of the state. I'm not for sure. I would say that he is. I would say that, just looking at this short video, that maybe there was a mental illness in place. Maybe there was, drug use in place or something, because, you can't possibly think that the outcome is not going to be what the outcome was. You can't possibly think, again, we are living in a day after all the victims that I named who were shot and killed, okay, who did not have weapons, okay, who was running away in many cases, some of them children, right, who were in their own home in some, like, we're living in that time after this has happened, after the Trump era, right? We're living in this time. We got to know and understand the state that we're in. And it's really cringy to see Black people online really going back and forth with people about equality in the law. Like, in my opinion, and again, I am not saying that you do not fight for our rights. I'm not saying that you do not fight for justice. You do not fight for the laws to be upheld equally. That is not what I'm saying. But when you see something like this is done and over with. This happened. They know the law, but what will happen is, as Neely Fuller so eloquently would put it, is that it's a time waster. You have people who will literally go back and forth with you to waste your time, go back and forth with you to, get in your head. They know what's right. They know what they should or should not have done. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's no judge in America, not one, that will watch this video and say that the officers were in the wrong, even though they may have lawfully been in the wrong. And again, I have not researched any, so I don't know what was lawful or not. That's not my area of expertise. That's not an area that, I'm just saying this is what's been argued online. But there's not one judge that will argue to prosecute these officers for shooting this man down after he attempted, they responded because he was attempting to steal. And then on top of that, in that process, he stabbed a female officer with the screwdriver. Like, really? Like, you really, like, for real, y'all? Like, for real? Like, for real, for real. So I wanted to talk about that. Again, as Black people, we don't live in a time, we just don't live in those times. And Neely Fuller talks about this a lot. And for those of you guys who are not familiar with Neely Fuller, I would suggest that you get familiar with him. I personally believe that he is probably the most pure-hearted person who speaks on racism, white supremacy that is on YouTube today. I would say that he has no agenda, that he truly uses logics. His answer is the same across the board. He's written a book about white supremacy and racism and how we have to be codified in how we respond. He's probably the only person that is truly speaking on this issue without any agenda. All right. So if you want to know more about, what he talks about, I would suggest looking Neely Fuller up. You will find a bunch of content on racism and white supremacy and how Black people should be codified in our responses. And one of the things that he says is that when we leave our homes every day, we got to leave in expectation. You expect for something to go down. And if it goes down, having in your mind a codified response. Okay. And I can tell you right now that if this video was to be played by Mr. Fuller and he was to see what would happen, he would probably ask a bunch of questions because that's one of his things. But on top of that, he would say, okay, the outcome is to be expected. That's what Mr. Fuller would say. So, again, I think that as Black people, we really need to be aware of the state that we're in. When you are out here committing crime, any crime, it doesn't even have to be a crime. When you out here, you could be barbecuing and you got too much smoke and the police is called. You better be aware, okay, that if the police is being called, you may not make it out. That go for men, women, and children. That is not to scare you. That is just realistic. That's just being realistic. You also have to know that if you go into a place where it's full of guns and white men, and you are a Black man or woman or teenager, that the outcome could potentially be this. So the opposite of that would be to probably not take that route. And this is why I say mental illness comes in and/or drug use, because again, this gentleman, when we talk about mental illness in the Black community, we also have to understand that the mental illness in the Black community is not talked about enough. Okay, mental illness in the Black community is like it's a major issue. Many Black people, that goes for women, men, and children. Many of us, we go undiagnosed. Many of us are misdiagnosed, and many of us, we just don't seek out we don't seek out the help. Okay, when you go through a life event, when you go through trauma, anything like that could be anything from a breakup, that could be anything from having a baby, that could be, it's so many different things, just life in general, being able to go and seek out someone for, whatever assistance you can receive is a good idea. But in the Black community, what happens is that many times, many of us, we go to the church because we believe we're very, spiritual, we're very religious people, many of us, not all, and we believe that all we have to do is go to church, get the pastor can lay hands and pray over us, and whatever we're dealing with is going to be handled by God. Many of us also believe that, let's say we're not religious, we don't believe in going to church, but we're spiritual. We believe that if we go out into nature, or we go sit in the sun, or, we smoke something and we, tune into our Zen, then, whatever mental illness is there or whatever issues are there is just going to somehow evaporate into, like, it doesn't work that way. Okay. All of those things may help, right? They may help, right? But it doesn't necessarily work that way. Okay. And depending on the severity of what could be taking place mentally in your mind will also depend on how much assistance is needed mentally. And make no mistake, mental illness and disability are not the same. They're not technically the same. Okay. They correlate, but they are not the same. You can have a physical disability, you can have a cognitive disability, but that may not necessarily you have a mental illness. Okay, and this is why they do cross each other, but they are not necessarily the same. A lot of times mental illness, you can't even see it. Mental illness doesn't even have a look. So a lot of times we have to take into consideration the cognitive part of it and the behavioral part of it. Those are the two main elements that mental health professionals look for. Okay? We look for cognitive think, like how do you handle situations? How do you process information? Your thoughts. That's all cognitive. Decision making, that's all cognitive, right? You can't see cognitive thoughts. You can't see it. It's inside of somebody's head. So the way that we are able to see that is if we look at the behavior that stems from the decision making, right? And the cognitive part, right? We look at that. That's those two things help us. And judging from this video, I would say there's some mental illness there, because there's nobody that is mentally healthy that would think that it would be a good idea to go into a place full of white men and guns and try to steal something from someone's bag. No one would think that would be a good idea. I mean, it would be you would probably, if somebody's stealing, I would think that they would probably go to like a corner store or Walmart or something like that, but not a gun class full of white men and guns. No, that's what tells me that there's probably some mental illness there. And probably also because it was it's random, and it appears to be out of desperation, so there's probably some drug use going on there as well. Again, this was not said. This is all alleged. This is just me giving my professional opinion, because again, I do have the background in mental health. So this is just me giving my professional opinion. And again, you're taking into consideration the cognitive and the behavior, right? The actions, how you respond to the thoughts and the decisions and things like that. That's going to be your behavior part of it. But I would say, with Black people, you because you did have some people online saying like, okay, well, if he was mentally ill, then he didn't know any better. That's literally like saying, because someone has a reading disability that they, can't comprehend right from wrong. And that's not true. That's not true. That's not true at all. This is why I say a disability and a mental illness is not the same. They do correlate, they do cross each other, but they are not necessarily the same. A lot of times you do find both that go hand in hand, but again, that does not make them the same, right? So, with this young man, we can't say that, oh, well, because there may be some mental illness there, that he's just intellectually stupid, intellectually unintelligent. Like, we can't say that. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of people that have disabilities, they would probably be highly offended if you were to say that. To think that just because someone has a disability, whether it be, even if it's reading, just because you can't read doesn't necessarily mean you're, you can't think or whatever. It could just simply mean that you just can't read. A lot of times, if you can't read, there is, writing issues and stuff like that. Those two do go hand in hand. But even still, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't know right from wrong, or that you don't know not to, you don't know the outcome of something or how something could turn out. The last thing that I want to talk about, you guys, is I already talked about mental illness. Oh, last thing I want to talk about is Black women arguing with men. Okay, this is what I've seen. And I used to do this, right? I would be online and I would be going back and forth with people about whatever the post or topic may be. And what I learned is that it would put me into my masculine energy. And, again, I believe in balance. So I do not believe women are going to be feminine 24/7, 7 days a week, every single second on the minute. Like that's not true. It's a such thing as balance. And if you study these things, you know that with balance comes you have a feminine and a masculine growing. This is why when people talk about kids growing up in a household, there needs to be a feminine presence there, and there also needs to be a masculine presence there, right? It's called balance, you guys. And so when you are sitting online, and I'm talking to women, more specifically Black women, because what I see a lot of, and again, I am guilty of this, so I know this all too well. What I see a lot of is we get into these going back and forth with these men, and over things that I think men should be tuning in on. And the reason why I say that is because I mean it's like you're in your masculine because it's like you're puffing out your chest at a man. And if you was in the physical and you were doing that, it could put you in danger, right? And even though you're doing it online, it could still put you in danger because you don't know what these people are capable of. And this is not to say that you don't speak your mind or you don't have your own opinions. Clearly, I have a YouTube channel where I present my opinions and things of that nature. But at the same time, I'm going to say what I need to say and leave it at that. I'm not going to go, and especially if I see that I am the only woman and I'm looking around, there's no men coming to my aid. There's no men handling up on this person. There's no men checking this person. If you are online and somebody gets very disrespectful to you and the men whom you're fighting for is not coming to your defense, that's a problem for me because you're putting yourself in a very you could be putting yourself in a dangerous situation. This is not, we're not living in a day and time where people don't look up your information and come find you. We're not living in a day and time where people don't dox people. Like, to me, it's not worth it. Say what you want to say your opinions, and leave it at that. Especially if you're doing this on behalf of people who wouldn't even do it. They're not doing it for you. I literally went down the thread on Twitter and I'm looking at, one woman in particular, and I'm like, baby girl, you are literally the only, like, where are the men at? Let the men handle up on that. You said what you needed to say. Leave, let the men, that's what we have men for, right? Yes, be supportive. Yes, have your own opinions. Yes, present, your thoughts or whatever, whatever. You can agree, you can disagree. But when you're going back and forth with men, to me, again, I was guilty of this. And when I woke up and realized that, wait a minute, because when you're going back and forth and you're going back and forth as it relates to, someone like talking about like racism and stuff like that or equality, men have no problem when you're doing it in that instance. But let you turn that on them, then they're going to call you masculine, right? Let you turn that on, okay, you've been mistreated and, or disrespected, and then you're going off, and then now they're calling you masculine. You see how that works? See, it works. It works when you are doing it online, or you're even when you're in face to face, when you're doing it on behalf of fighting for being this warrior for justice and stuff like that. But as soon as you use that same logic on your man or another man, then they're calling you masculine. I say don't do that. Don't do it at all, baby girl. Like, there's a time for that. There's a time to defend yourself. There's a time to stand up for yourself. And there's a time to let the men handle that. For real. Like, all that heavy lifting and going back and forth, like, it's for the birds. It's for the birds. And believe me, as a content creator right here on YouTube, I get it. There's a bunch of people that come up under my videos that disagree with me, that are, rude, that are disrespectful, that, get blocked. There's a bunch of people. I literally I may respond one time and I leave it at that. I don't go back and forth with people. I used to, but when I woke up and realized what was happening, again, it's putting me in an angry state. It's putting me in this masculine state, and then I'm looking around and I'm like, where the men at? Where y'all at? Y'all not going to, go get this dude? Y'all just gonna, y'all just, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, baby girl, ladies, don't do that. Don't do that. Let the men handle it. Say what you got to say and move on. And that's pretty much all I have. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Tell me your thoughts. Obviously, I know the conversation is on like whether or not police were justified, in like after he ran away, he was no longer a threat. So they should have just kind of, let him run away, I guess. And then you have people who argue the reverse of that. They're like, nope, he stabbed the officer. He was still technically a threat. He's a threat to society. They should have stopped him. Or they say, okay, well, yeah, they should have stopped him, but maybe not shoot at him. What are your thoughts on this video? Leave them in the comment section. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.